So friends, it happened again. I read 4 books this month. Hello everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Riley K. Jones. I'm a writer, teacher, and author tuber, and today we are going to talk about the books that I read in July. Now, if you have followed me through this series of 2022 book reads, you know that my goal was to read 25 books in 2022, and I have smashed that out of the park last month. And then I told myself, like, hey, like, no pressure, I'll just read a book a month. And then July happened and I read 4, all of which are YA thrillers, some of which have been on my to-be read list, and so I just kind of picked up randomly along my journeys. So the first one we're going to talk about is You'll Be the Death of Me by Karen McManus. So You'll Be the Death of Me is basically, like, the way I can describe it the best, it's Ferris Bueller Days Off meets murder. So we have 3 characters, Ivy, Mateo, and Cal, and they used to be friends, but then they've kind of drifted apart, and then one random day in school, they all decided we're gonna reconnect and relive this day that we ditched school and played hooky and hung out. So they did that as kind of like a last hurrah of, like, you know, I just don't feel like going to school today, and they all met at the parking lot. They're like, let's just ditch. So they go into the city and they go to a place to hang out that they knew would be abandoned because Cal knows someone who uses this space like the art studio, and they're like, hey, we can go hang out there for a little while. They go there and one of their classmates is also there and is murdered. So then it's just this whirlwind of, like, basically a day that takes place. So it's basically one day trying to figure out who killed him, why they killed him, and running from the police, essentially, because the suspect that they saw killed the classmate looked similar to Ivy. So they're trying to figure out, like, how and why and all that jazz, including trying to patch up their friendship and to figure out kind of like where their lives have been the last 4 or 5 years. They haven't really spoken to each other. So it was a whirlwind. It was a lot of fun. Karen McManus does a great job with her characters, and it's a triple point of view. So she does a really great job, like, streaming them all together, and so that one flows into the other and it makes sense. And all the characters just sound real and lovely and just fun to be with and fun to explore, like, their thoughts, and you're rooting for them, you're trying to figure out this mystery with them, and it's a lot of fun. So I really recommend, if you like thrillers and you like mysteries and friendships and all of that, this was a really fun piece to read. It was also very fast-paced, and I just kind of devoured it. Really, really great. So I recommend this 5 out of 5 stars. You'll Be the Death of Me. The next book that I read, I have had for a little while, and I finally got around to reading it, and this is 14 Ways to Die by Vincent Ralph. So this is about a girl whose name is Jess, and when she was 7, her mom was brutally murdered in, like, literally like a half a block away from her house. Was the first of many serial killings that ended up happening in her hometown, which takes place in England. So that kind of threw me off for a second, but it does take place in England. And the serial killer was nicknamed the Magpie Man by Jess's father. And so you see, fast forward 10 years, the serial killer has not been caught yet, and Jess has an opportunity to become basically a live streamer and live stream one day out of her life to help catch and, like, make people aware of the Magpie Man and to help catch this guy. And so it's a really fun thriller, and the book it definitely has 3 distinct acts. So, like, the first act, you have basically a whole, like, roller coaster ride. That was really fun. The second act is a little bit a little bit non-traditional. Like there's definitely a midpoint turn and all that, but it's told in a way that you wouldn't expect it to go. I know it's kind of vague, but when you read it, maybe you can think about what I'm talking about. But so it has its own little like midpoint turn and everything, and then the conclusion is where Act 1 and Act 2 like kind of come together to wrap it up. So that was a kind of unique way of storytelling. Something else unique about this book is the chapters are insanely short. So sometimes I found that annoying, and other times I felt like it worked. The reason why I found it annoying sometimes is because it'd be like a page or a paragraph or like or just a few short paragraphs together. So sometimes I thought that was a little bit jarring, but then other times I found myself like flying through because there were so many little chapters. I was like, oh, after this chapter, oh wait, no, after this one's only a page, and then I would end up reading five extra chapters or 5 extra pages. So that was kind of a fun, and like it kept you reading. But not only just that, is that just like Jess's case kept me reading on, and then just like the things that happened. And there was also a romance subplot. I feel like that was not its strong suit. It worked, but it definitely wasn't like romance the way I would typically see romance plots of like, oh, we met each other, we locked eyes, we fell in love. It was almost more friendship than romance, but it worked. It just didn't work as romance. Like I could see if it was a movie like how it would play out, but for the book romance, I didn't love that part of it. However, Vincent Ralph did just a great job of world building and storytelling to catch the Magpie Man. There were moments where I was a little bit scared for the character, and also like looking around my surroundings and being like, oh man. And then there were moments that I was just like wanting to know what happened next because things were getting worse before they were getting better. So yeah, it was definitely a very interesting perspective of like taking someone who like lives on that, like has a platform, and like trying to catch a killer was very fascinating. So I gave this book 4 out of 5 stars, more like 4.5 out of 5 stars. It's more like I loved it. I just sometimes I didn't love everything about it, but it was definitely worth reading and worth checking out. And I actually picked up his second book, so it's not like a sequel to this, called I think Lock Your Doors, and that also seems really interesting. So definitely worth checking out if you like the thrillers and like the suspense and mystery element. Like had a lot of good things happening here. It was really worth reading. The next book I picked up because I was on vacation and needed another book to read on my flight home because I had finished 14 Ways to Die, and I heard a lot about Kara Thompson's That Weekend, so I picked up a copy of this and just devoured it. Like, I picked it up 2 days before the flight and I finished it the day after I arrived home. So this is a more of an isolation thriller, but also amnesia elements. So we have our main character Claire, and she and her friend Kat and her boyfriend Jesse all went up to the Catskill Mountains, where Kat's grandmother owned this really nice like cabin in the woods, and they stayed there and they're planning on camping. But Claire wakes up like 3 days later in the middle of the woods and can't remember anything, and can't remember what happened to Jesse or Kat. And it was definitely a fantastic premise. You're swept into her world and her perspective and trying to figure out what happened that night. Like, this tagline is just amazing. 3 best friends, a lake house, a secret trip. What could go wrong? And it is just really cool. Loved it. Like, fast-paced. I felt with Claire like I was in her perspective, like trying to be like, I don't know what happened either. So like the frustration and like when you pick up little bits of elements and everything. It was really well done. So if you like isolation tropes, the amnesia trope, and history, this book is definitely for you. 5 out of 5 stars. The last book I also picked up while on vacation, and it was something that I just like walked into a Five Below of all places and saw that they had this book out for sale, and I was like, $5. It was something kind of on my radar, so let me pick this up. And it was Killer Content by Kylie Roach. So this book is about the 6 teenagers who are TikTok stars, and they all live together in a house, and then one of them gets into a fight with everybody else and then turns up dead in the house. So this book, I had some issues with. I think if you really love Pretty Little Liars TV show version, and that's like something that's like your guilty pleasure and you're just like obsessed, this book is for you. There were just moments of the book that I just could not get on board with. And I think it's because there were some elements of just insane, like Pretty Little Liars TV show, where you're just like, really? Like, okay. It is a dual POV book. All of the members of the Lit Layer have their own POV. There were definitely a couple that you've landed on more than some of the others. That was the biggest problem with the book, was there's so many POVs that you couldn't stay in a lane. So I couldn't like really feel like, oh, I can root for this character a bit, because you're kind of like whiplashed between the different points of view. And I could not follow the book as well. I see why she made those choices in order to tell the story, to kind of be like, well, who, kind of like had that one of us is lying type of vibe of like, who really killed her? But I just don't think it worked. It was just told in like, it's not head hopping, but the chapters almost felt like head hopping instead of really bunkering down with just like 1 or 2 or even 3 of those characters, but instead you are told in 6-ish different perspectives. And for how short the book is, it didn't really connect well. Like, there were definitely like Beau's perspective you didn't really connect with very much. Like, he had a couple of chapters here and there. And this is spoilers, if you want to skip ahead, that's fine. But then Beau kind of figures out everything. So I'm like, I'm just like, there's no like detective character. Everyone's just kind of like, huh, how is this gonna work? And then somehow these 5 or so kids figure out things that the police didn't pick up on. But anyway, so with Gwen's character, she says this one thing, and I just almost threw the book across the room, because I teach this specific person who says this quote. So let me read the quote to you. I think that Kylie Roach was using this to show us that Gwen is not the brightest, smartest, book-savvy person in the world, but she is still a competent person. So she knew all these quotes about Kardashians and what these people say and like all these people who are idols, and then she lands on this. Some old dude once said, "The unexamined life is not worth living. This is how I know my life is worth a lot. It is examined by 80 million people every day." That's like more people than the population of France. And that just like makes me mad, because I think that what the author's trying to do is to illustrate that this girl, not the smartest not that she's not smart, 'cause she's smart, just not the most well-rounded in that aspect of like knowing things. But she knew how to sell herself, and that was like her whole business. Which, okay, is in itself great, but it's just she grossly misinterpreted what Socrates meant by that quote. So this is something, I guess, because like for me, I teach Socrates. So what Socrates means by this, and I'm sure that the author knows this, but he means that examining your life is looking at your life, questioning the things that you do, and seeing if they are worth doing. Not that other people are watching your life, meaning that you have success and fame and worth. And maybe the author was trying to highlight that. I'm like, I think that's what she was trying to do there. Like, she was commentating on the TikTok style and life and culture that it's promoting. But what I really would have liked to see from Gwen is that at the end, because she does have the last say in the book, her perspective is the last perspective that we see. She is the first and the last. And what I really would have liked to see is her coming back to this quote and realizing that her life's worth is not found in the fact that she has millions of followers, even though she does have more or whatever. But it's the fact that she has questioned her life and found contentment and joy and peace in these things, or is learning and trying to improve herself more. There's like a little bit of a vibe to that, but it's not, it doesn't bookend well. So I think if she brought that quote back in and realized, and somehow like along the journey kind of had that epiphany, or was talking with someone, and you know, I wish that just had been more of a theme, that was a more stated theme to really hit that nail on the head, like drive it home. And that wasn't there. But that's only one of the things that I had some issues with. So some of the things I didn't like about the book is the police work was just super unrealistic. That's why it's like Pretty Little Liars TV show type of police work. They find out all these things about the body within like 3 hours of arriving on the scene, which is hyper unrealistic. For the pacing, it worked, but it did not make sense. And like, there are sometimes you can have the illusion of disbelief and you can be like, okay, well, you know, this is just happening and it's fine. But there was just so much that just did not seem fine. Another thing that I really had a problem with, and again, it was this Gwen character. I mean, it was kind of all the characters, like, except for Kat. I loved Kat and Bo. I wish I could have seen more Kat and Bo perspective than I did with Gwen and this Tucker fellow who was Sydney, the girl who went missing and went dead. That was her boyfriend, and Gwen was supposed to be her best friend, but they were having an affair. And there were just some times I was like, it's a little bit too much description with their affair. And I mean, like, they were 17-year-olds living in a house together with no parental supervision. I mean, that was the recipe for disaster, clearly. I mean, like, someone died as a cause of it. So this book I gave a 2.5 out of 5-star review, clearly because of more of that kind of unrealistic development. I just could not get on board with that. I did read it. It was kind of fun, but there is definitely some things that wasn't satisfactory. But it was still like a fun, easy read if you're like looking for something that's fun, easy to read, easy to follow. It was fast paced. I read it within only, I think, 2 or 3 days, like just reading a little bit every night. But yeah, so it was a fun book. It just wasn't the type of book that I was expecting it to be. Not highly rated, but if you like that kind of vibe of like that Pretty Little Liars, like, random type of twists and turns that were clearly Pretty Little Liars level types of twists and turns, like if you know exactly what I mean. Exactly. But I'm not gonna talk too much because I don't want to spoil it. It definitely is worth checking out, especially if you could just like walk into a Five Below. I mean, like, it's there and it's, you know, easy poolside beach read to do. So those are the books that I read in July. Definitely had a YA thriller like heavy load. So let me know, guys, what was your favorite book read in July, and have you read any of these books before? Which one of them was your favorite and why? And if you liked this video, please make sure to give this video a nice big thumbs up. It lets me know that you like videos like this one. And if you haven't already, click subscribe. I release all new videos on all things writing and reading every Thursday. Thanks again so much for watching. Keep writing, keep reading, and stay creative. Bye!